Welcome to the Asia Briefing podcast series. Today, joining us in Hong Kong is Mr. Chris Devonshire-Ellis, the founder of Dezan Shira Associates. Today, Chris will be answering questions for American companies doing business in Singapore. Chris, why is Singapore important for American companies?
Singapore is important because it is the de facto regional financial and services hub for Southeast Asia. It's a member of ASEAN, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. It's a significant market. To put that into context, ASEAN has a population of about 600 million people with a combined GDP of about US $1.8 trillion. If it was a country, it would be the 9th largest in the world. ASEAN is effectively a trade bloc situated between China and India. So ASEAN is really the third Asian dragon in terms of its size, and Singapore is the regional financial and services hub for that. So it's very, very important for American companies that want to reach out into these markets.
What free trade agreements does ASEAN currently have?
It has several, but the ones which will be of particular interest to American companies, that ASEAN has an FTA with China, also with India. So this means that manufacturing ASEAN, if your product fits into either the China or India free trade agreements, then those can be manufactured and exported to those markets duty-free. ASEAN also is part of the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, which is still under negotiation, although those negotiations are expected to be completed by 2015. And the RCEP includes ASEAN, with Singapore right there in the middle of it, but also China, India, but Japan, South Korea, Australia and New Zealand. So ASEAN as a trade bloc to participate in free trade throughout Asia is going to be a really, really exciting area for American companies.
How does an American company qualify to take advantage of ASEAN?
It's very simple. All you need to do is to set up a company in ASEAN, and as a subsidiary of an American company, as a limited liability company in ASEAN, then you automatically qualify. So back to Singapore, the easiest thing to do would be for an American company to set up a Singaporean subsidiary and then use that as a holding company to then explore the rest of ASEAN and the free trade agreements. So let's just look at setting up a Singaporean company. It costs a maximum of 2 Singapore dollars for 2 shares. You can have just 1 shareholder. You need 2 directors, one of whom needs to be a Singapore national or permanent residency holder, but there are nominee services that can be taken advantage of. So Singapore is set up as a Singapore holding company to then hold other manufacturing operations elsewhere in ASEAN. Makes a lot of sense.
And what would be the advantages to choosing Singapore over Hong Kong for that holding company?
Well, Singapore is a member of ASEAN. Hong Kong is not. So really the advantages are that if you want to tap into the ASEAN market and all those free trade between them, there's no duties on the movement of products anywhere throughout any ASEAN nation, then Singapore is the obvious answer. So Hong Kong, meanwhile, is really a trade hub, trade services and financial support hub for mainland China, whereas Singapore is the trade and financial services hub for ASEAN. So they service different markets is really the answer to that question. In terms of tax structures, then they're very similar. Corporate income tax in Hong Kong is 16.5% and in Singapore it's 17%. There are a number of other benefits that Hong Kong incorporations have as regards its relations with mainland China, such as the closer economic regional partnership, which allows Hong Kong companies preferential treatment when it comes to doing business in mainland China. But Singapore has similar things for small to medium enterprises, including foreign invested SMEs in Singapore. It will also offer tax incentives, no tax, profits tax for the first couple of years, something that Hong Kong does not do. So really they're very similar. If you're used to dealing with Hong Kong, then Singapore is very similar indeed. But the answer to the question really is a geographical one.
What is the extent of the American community in Singapore?
The United States has a significant presence in Singapore. Its embassy there, which I've had the privilege of visiting, is large. There's a very sizable American diplomatic mission in Singapore. And as I said, that's no real surprise because it is a financial and trade services centre for Southeast Asia. So the American business community there is very strong. The American Department of Commerce also has a significant and very well organised office in Singapore. The American Chamber of Commerce in Singapore is very, very vibrant, very active community. There is an American club, and it remains and is certainly growing as a very significant hub for US business interests in Southeast Asia.
So Chris, can you just quickly summarize the current situation with Singapore and ASEAN?
Yeah, as I said, it's a regional financial services hub for ASEAN. Singapore is a low-tax jurisdiction. Corporate income tax in Singapore is 17%, which means that profits derived from operations held by that entity elsewhere in ASEAN can be distributed from Singapore elsewhere, including back to the United States. Singapore doesn't charge tax on profits realised from outside its territory, and as part of ASEAN, American companies setting up a Singaporean entity do not face any duties on goods manufactured by any subsidiaries of that Singaporean entity anywhere else in ASEAN. So as a base to provide both financial and services support to manufacturing operations elsewhere in Vietnam or Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia, so on and so forth. And Singapore is an excellent hub for US businesses wanting to reach out to a market of 600 million people and with a GDP of 1.8 trillion. So it's the third leg of a three-legged stool in Asia. American companies should be in Singapore for ASEAN, and you've also got China and India there as well. So it's a triumvirate, and Singapore completes that.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Asia Briefing podcast series. For additional business resources, or if you would like to learn more about doing business in Singapore, please visit our website at www.dezshira.com. We hope you can join us next time on the Asia Briefing podcast series.